And ladies, don't let anybody tell you you are ever past your prime. Never give up.
So did you guess what this episode is about? Michelle Yeoh at the Oscars struck down one stereotype about women and their ambitions. There are many, many more. Unweeding them out one at a time.
Oh, hi! I was doing some cosmetic shopping and then we just passed Women's Day, so I thought, why not indulge myself? But while I was doing cosmetic shopping, it reminded me of an episode very early in my career when I was working as a journalist with the Times of India. And I used to cover lifestyle at that point of time. So I had a colleague who walked up to me, he was a crime reporter, and he said very cheekily, "Oh, so you look very busy, but what are you writing on? You write on earrings, you write on fashion, lipsticks. So what do you want to change with your stories? Because fashion basically is the business of frivolity." And I understood where it was coming from. So I said, yeah, you're right. Actually, it is the business of frivolity. Only it runs into billions of dollars across the world and provides employment and livelihood to lakhs and lakhs of people from Bangladesh to US, then India, and then just everywhere, yeah, even in Europe. So let's just count the fashion industry in, even if it is a business of frivolity, as he's mentioned. But that was my first encounter with
Sexism at workplace.
but certainly not the last. So after a few years, when I was working with another media organization, I went up to my boss and I said, "It's time you gave me a raise." He just looked at me and he asked me one question, and I knew like what was going to happen. So he just asked me, "So what does your husband do, by the way, Ashima?" Whatever I told him, then he said, "You know what? I love your work. It's amazing whatever you're doing, but let's just skip raise for a bit because economically the organization is not doing very well. You're really not short on finances. So can we please skip the raise this time, even though I know you worked very hard?" Yeah, so that was another episode. But over the years in journalism, I realized that for women, the journey is not a straight road. It's not a straight road to success. It's not a straight road to getting your due.
It's a warped path full of spikes, full of stones you could tumble over often.
Also, we often talk about breaking the glass ceiling. But what all it has taken for a woman to shatter the glass ceiling also deserves an applause.
According to a report, Women CEOs in America, published in 2021, presented by the Women Business Collaborative, women make up more than 50% of the college-educated workforce. Yet, they only make up a fraction of CEOs. However, another report published around the same time by S&P Global highlighted how women CEOs exemplify leadership style needed in tough times. Now remember, those were the tough times of the pandemic. Sexism at workplace can be very blatant or very subtle. Howsoever it is, what is important is that the organization acknowledges it and takes appropriate measures. Now, as it is, the economic gender gap is alarming. Okay, let me refer here to the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Report of 2022. It says, quote unquote, "At the current rate of progress, the economic gender gap will close in 132 years. In 2020, the gender gap was set to close within 100 years. It was still better. And then it backslid, just like the several democracies of the world. From time to time, the corporate sector tosses up initiatives that promises to bring about gender equality. Introduction and execution of internship programs for young women leaders, making diversity, equity and inclusion a part of the talent acquisition strategy, and launching gender equality campaigns often are a few of the methods the corporate sector is already dabbling in to achieve the aim of gender equality. Okay, on the similar lines of gender equality is the concept of gender equity, which actually is more important in today's age and time. In plain language, equity means recognizing that each individual has unique circumstances and allocation of resources and opportunities are done accordingly to reach the same outcome. In retrospection, if you think of it, where did sexism at workplace come from? It wasn't birthed in the boardrooms, but in the comfort of our homes. And it is especially true for those like me coming from the South Asian community. The stereotypes have been over the years solidified into the belief system.
I, like most of the other girls born and brought up in the South Asian community, have seen it, experienced it, and even imbibed it in some or the other form.
What comes as a privilege to men becomes a women's responsibility. Let's just take the most basic example of food. In most cases, a woman cooks it and a man eats it.
I'll share a very interesting example with you of a friend of mine who came from a very modern family. By modern, I mean everyone in her family went to very good schools, they were very well traveled, wore best of the designer clothes, spoke good English because that's another measure of being modern in India.
She told me one day that her brother was getting married to a very well educated girl.
And she was very happy that she was coming to their family. And I was like, wow, you must be so proud of her. I so want her to take care of my mother now because my mother has worked all these years in the kitchen to raise me up and to raise my brother up. And my mother has contributed a lot to the family, so it's time someone else comes and takes up the responsibilities. My reaction was that you're so worried about your mom. Have you or your brother ever helped her in the kitchen? Or have both of you guys helped her with the household chores since you're so worried about your mom? She did not have an answer for that, but that gave me another clear picture of how gender bias, of how sexism exists around us and how we have imbibed it.
I also learnt another lesson.
Being modern is one thing,
But having a modern outlook is a totally different concept altogether. So while women are encouraged to lead at the corporate spaces, men should be encouraged to practice gender equality and gender equity.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Thinking Shopper and the content gave you some food for thought. That's it for now. See you next week with another episode.
Meanwhile, I'll just get back to my online shopping.